Hey everyone, and welcome to Unheard. I'm your host, and this is our very first episode. Unheard is where we share the stories people carry in silence, the confessions that weigh heavy on hearts, the truths that need to be spoken. Every story you'll hear is real, raw, and comes from someone who trusted us enough to break their silence. If you believe in what we're building here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You'll help us reach people who need to hear these stories. And if today's story moves you, please leave a comment below. Let's build this community together, one story at a time. Here's our very first confession, from someone who has been carrying a secret for 17 years. I've been carrying this for 17 years. 17 years of waking up every morning and pretending I'm someone I'm not. 17 years of looking my family in the eye and lying. My name. Well, it doesn't matter what my name is. What matters is what I did. What I didn't do. The choice I made when I was 15 that changed everything. Guess I should start at the beginning. Growing up, my little brother Marcus was everything I wasn't. Where I was quiet and invisible, he was loud and magnetic. Where I struggled in school, he excelled effortlessly. Where I faded into the background, he commanded every room he walked into. People always said we looked nothing alike. Marcus had my mom's bright green eyes and this infectious smile that made everyone feel like they were the most important person in the world. I had my dad's plain brown eyes and, well, let's just say I wasn't the one people remembered at family gatherings. But Marcus never made me feel small. That's the thing about him. He had this way of pulling people up instead of standing on top of them. When kids at school would make jokes about my stutter, Marcus would show up and somehow make them laugh with me instead of at me. He was 3 years younger, but he protected me in ways I never protected him. He was my best friend. My only real friend, if I'm being honest. The summer I turned 15, Marcus was 12 and had just finished 6th grade. He was excited about starting middle school, kept talking about trying out for the basketball team, maybe joining the debate club. Everything was possibility to him. Everything was adventure. That's when our cousin Danny came to stay with us. Danny was 18, had just graduated high school, and was supposed to be this success story in our family. Star athlete, full scholarship to college, the golden boy that all the aunts and uncles bragged about at every family dinner. But there was something about Danny that made my skin crawl. The way he would stare just a little too long. The way his jokes always had this edge that cut too deep. The way he would put his hands on you when he talked. Your shoulder, your back, lingering just long enough to make you uncomfortable. My parents loved him. Danny's such a good influence, my mom would say. So mature for his age. Marcus could learn a lot from him. Danny was staying with us for the summer while his parents were going through what everyone politely called a rough patch. But what I later learned was a messy, bitter divorce. He was sleeping in our guest room, working part-time at my dad's construction company, and basically being treated like the son my parents always wished they'd had. I tried to tell myself I was just jealous, that my weird feelings about Danny were just me being paranoid and antisocial like always. I should have trusted my instincts. It started small. Danny would ruffle Marcus's hair and let his hand linger on the back of his neck. He'd insist on giving Marcus wrestling lessons in the backyard that always seemed to involve too much physical contact. He'd make jokes about Marcus's cute little voice that made my brother blush and look uncomfortable. But Marcus seemed to worship Danny. Finally, an older guy was paying attention to him, treating him like he was cool and important. Danny would take Marcus to the movies, buy him baseball cards, let him stay up late playing video games when our parents went to bed. I told myself I was overthinking it. This was what having a big brother figure looked like, right? I wouldn't know. I'd never had one. Then I walked into the bathroom one night to brush my teeth and found Danny standing behind Marcus, who was in just his underwear, supposedly helping him with his back acne. Danny's hands were on Marcus's shoulders, and he was whispering something in his ear that made my brother giggle nervously. They both jumped when they saw me. Danny laughed it off. Just helping the little man out, you know how it is. But something in his eyes went cold and hard when he looked at me, like he was calculating something. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my stomach churning with this sick feeling I couldn't name. But I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have any proof of anything wrong, just this terrible knowing in my gut. 3 weeks later, our parents went to their friend's anniversary party. They'd be gone until after midnight, maybe later. Danny volunteered to babysit us, even though at 15, I hardly needed a babysitter. I remember the house feeling different that night, heavier somehow, like the air itself was holding its breath. Danny ordered pizza and suggested we have a guys' night. Movies, junk food, no bedtime. Marcus was thrilled. I pretended to be excited but spent most of the evening watching Danny watch Marcus. Around 10 o'clock, I said I was tired and went upstairs to my room. I wasn't really tired. I just needed to get away from the sick feeling that was building in my chest every time I saw Danny's hand on Marcus's knee or heard his too loud laugh at something my brother said. I put on my headphones and tried to lose myself in music, but I couldn't concentrate. Something felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. That's when I heard it. A sound from Marcus's room, muffled and strange, like someone crying but trying not to cry. I took off my headphones and listened. Nothing. Then it happened again. I should have gotten up right then. I should have walked down the hall and opened Marcus's door. I should have done something. Instead, I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself Marcus was probably just emotional about some movie they were watching. I told myself that if something was really wrong, Marcus would call for me. But I knew. God help me. I knew what was happening in that room, and I pulled my covers over my head and turned my music up louder. Marcus didn't come down for breakfast the next morning. When Mom finally went to check on him, she found him with a fever, claiming he felt sick. He stayed in bed for 3 days. When he finally emerged, he was different, quieter. He stopped making eye contact. He flinched when people touched him. Even casual touches like Mom ruffling his hair or Dad patting his back. Danny acted completely normal, cheerful, helpful, asking Marcus if he was feeling better with this tone of fake concern that made me want to throw up. I tried to talk to Marcus when we were alone, but he would just shrug and say he was fine. He was just tired from being sick. But his eyes looked like something had gone out of them. The basketball tryouts he'd been so excited about. He decided he wasn't interested anymore. The debate club. Too much work. Everything that had made Marcus light up before, he suddenly didn't care about. And I said nothing. I did nothing. Danny left for college 2 weeks later. There was a big family send-off dinner, everyone talking about how proud they were, how he was going to do great things. He gave Marcus a long hug goodbye, whispered something in his ear that made my brother go rigid. After Danny left, I thought things would go back to normal. I thought Marcus would bounce back like he always did. He didn't. Marcus got quieter and quieter. His grades started slipping. He stopped hanging out with his friends. Mom and Dad were worried but attributed it to normal growing pains. The adjustment to middle school? Maybe just missing his big brother figure. I knew better. I knew what had broken something inside my little brother. And I knew I could have stopped it. The next few years were like watching someone drown in slow motion. Marcus went from being this bright, confident kid to this hollow shell who just went through the motions of living. He started getting into trouble at school. Small things at first, not turning in homework, talking back to teachers. Then bigger things. Fighting. Skipping classes. By the time he was 15, he'd been suspended twice. My parents tried everything. Therapy, medication, stricter rules, more freedom, rewards, consequences. Nothing worked because none of them knew what they were trying to fix. Marcus started using drugs when he was 16. Weed at first, then harder stuff. He'd come home with glassy eyes and this dead expression that made me want to shake him and scream. I'm sorry. I should have stopped it. I should have saved you. But I never said those words. I never told anyone what I suspected had happened that night. I just watched my little brother disappear piece by piece and told myself it was too late to do anything about it. Marcus was 17 when it happened. Fentanyl-laced heroin, the coroner said later. He was found in an abandoned house downtown by some kids who were skipping school. The paramedics worked on him for 43 minutes. I know because I counted every single one while we sat in that hospital waiting room. Mom crying into Dad's shoulder. Both of them looking like they'd aged 10 years in the span of an hour. He survived, barely. Spent 2 weeks in the ICU, another month in rehab. When he came home, he was thinner and paler, and looked like a ghost of the boy who used to light up every room. That's when he told me. We were sitting on the back porch late one night, about a week after he'd come home from rehab. Marcus was smoking a cigarette. The one vice they'd let him keep, since it was harm reduction compared to what he'd been doing before. You know, don't you? He said suddenly, not looking at me. My heart stopped. Know what? About Danny. About that night. I couldn't breathe. Marcus. I heard you that night. Getting up, walking around upstairs. I kept waiting for you to come check on me. His voice was flat, emotionless. I kept thinking, any second now he's going to come down the hall and open my door and this will stop. The cigarette was shaking in his hand. But you never came. That conversation was 3 years ago. Marcus is 20 now, still struggling but alive. He's been clean for 18 months, has a job at a coffee shop, is taking community college classes. He's trying. We don't talk about that night anymore. We don't talk about Danny. We certainly don't talk about how I failed him when he needed me most. But it's there between us always. This knowledge that when my little brother was being hurt in the worst possible way, his big brother chose silence over action, chose his own comfort over Marcus's safety. I've thought about telling our parents 1,000 times. I've thought about reporting Danny, who's now some successful businessman with a wife and kids of his own. I've thought about confronting him, about making him pay somehow for what he did. But what's the point now? It would destroy my parents, who still don't understand why their golden boy fell apart. It would force Marcus to relive everything when he's finally starting to heal. And it wouldn't change the fact that I knew and did nothing. Last month, I got an invitation to Danny's wedding. Apparently, I'm still on the family mailing list for big events. The invitation was fancy, expensive looking. There was a photo of Danny and his fiancée, both of them smiling these perfect, practiced smiles. I stared at that photo for a long time, thinking about the 12-year-old boy who used to trust everyone, who used to believe the world was full of good people and endless possibilities. Thinking about how that boy died in a way that night when he was 12, even though his body kept breathing for 5 more years until the drugs almost finished what Danny started. I threw the invitation away, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About Danny getting his happy ending while Marcus is still picking up the pieces of his childhood. About how unfair it is that some people get to cause damage and then just move on. But mostly, I think about how I could have prevented all of it with one moment of courage. One decision to get up and walk down that hall and open that door. People talk about guilt like it's this thing that gets lighter over time. Like eventually, you forgive yourself and move on. They're wrong. Guilt isn't a weight that you learn to carry. It's a weight that grows heavier every day. Every time Marcus flinches away from unexpected touch. Every time I see him struggle with trust, with relationships, with believing he deserves good things. Every time I remember how bright and fearless he used to be. I carry the weight of knowing that my cowardice cost my little brother his childhood. That my silence allowed a monster to do irreparable damage to the person I loved most in the world. That I chose my own comfort over his safety, and I'll have to live with that choice for the rest of my life. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not looking for absolution or someone to tell me it wasn't my fault, because it was. I'm telling you this because somewhere out there, someone else is lying in bed right now, hearing sounds from another room that make their stomach turn. Someone else is seeing signs that something isn't right, but telling themselves they're imagining things. Someone else is standing at the same crossroads I stood at 17 years ago. The choice between acting on their instincts and staying silent. If that's you, please don't make the choice I made. Trust your gut. Trust that feeling in your stomach that tells you something is wrong. Trust that it's better to be wrong and look foolish than to be right and do nothing. Because the truth is, I'll never know if I could have saved Marcus that night. Maybe Danny would have just found another opportunity. Maybe it would have happened anyway. But I'll always know that I didn't try. I'll always know that when my little brother needed me most, I chose silence. And that's a weight I'll carry forever. Marcus and I still see each other sometimes. Family dinners, holidays, that kind of thing. We're polite, even affectionate in the way siblings learn to be. But there's this space between us now that never used to be there. This knowledge that changes everything. Last Christmas, he gave me a book. Nothing special, just some thriller novel he thought I'd like. But inside the front cover, he'd written, "For my big brother. I forgive you. M." I cried reading those words. Not the quiet, dignified crying you see in movies, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. Because even though Marcus forgives me, even though he's found a way to let go of the anger and resentment he has every right to feel, I can't forgive myself. Maybe that's my punishment. Maybe that's what I deserve, to carry this weight forever, to remember every day the choice I made and the boy I failed to protect. Or maybe, someday, telling this story will matter. Maybe someone will hear these words and make a different choice than I did. Maybe someone will find the courage I couldn't find when I was 15 and scared and didn't know what to do. Maybe Marcus's forgiveness can extend that far, to saving someone else, the way I couldn't save him. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for carrying this weight with me, even if it's just for these few minutes. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone needs you to be brave, please, be braver than I was. Because silence isn't neutral. Silence isn't safe. Sometimes silence is violence. And sometimes the things we don't do echo louder than the things we do. Thank you to the person who trusted us with that confession. I know that took incredible courage to share, and I hope getting it out there brings you some peace. That's exactly why I started Unheard. These stories need to be heard. If this moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. This is just the beginning. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And please leave a comment below. Tell me what you thought about this first episode. Let the person who shared this know they're not alone. If you have a story you've been carrying, submit it to the email in the description. Every story matters, and your secret is safe with me. Remember, you are not your worst moment. You are worthy of forgiveness. You are worthy of peace. Thank you for being here for episode 1. Until next time, this is Unheard.